Everyone, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Olivia. How are you doing today? And hope you're staying safe. If you're new to this channel, kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. I post new videos every Wednesdays and Saturdays. This channel is about fashion tutorials, lifestyle, DIY. You wouldn't afford to miss any of my interesting videos, so hit that subscribe button now. So in today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to make this one shoulder kaftan gown, so keep on watching. Yeah. Welcome back, guys. So this is the fabric we're going to be using for this tutorial. As you can see, this fabric has two faces. There's this plain side and then this shiny patterned side. Okay, so I'll be using this fabric for this tutorial. And mind you, when you're making this kind of dress, you need to consider the type of fabric you want to use. You don't use every fabric for this kind of dress because of the cowl effects you get. Okay, so you need to check the fabric before you use, preferably a scuba material or a thick chiffon or satin would do. So here, as you can see, I've folded my fabric already. This fabric is a bell material, so it's measuring 60 inches on the length. It's 60 inches, and then on the width I just folded the whole material that I have. I have about 2.5 yards or more. So I just folded, I think I have close to 3 yards. I just folded it, like as you can see, and I'm going to start taking my measurements. So for this kind of dress, what you need is just, you don't really need much measurements. What you need is just your hip measurements, your shoulder to hip, your shoulder to floor, and your round sleeve measurements. That is what you basically need here. So I'm marking my shoulder to hip measurements, which is 25.5 inches, and then I'm going to be using the full length, so I don't need to mark the full length anymore. Mind you, my shoulder to hip measurement is 25, and then I'm adding ½ inch for joining the shoulder, and that is 25.5. So I'm just connecting it with a straight ruler to get a straight line. So this line is just going to be a guide. So guys, I'm just going to mark my sleeve length. That's the long sleeve length where you want it to stop. So how you get this measurements, you measure from the midpoint of your neck, from the midpoint of your neck down to where you want the sleeve to stop. That is how to get the sleeve length. So for me, like I said, I'm going to be using the whole of this fabric. I have more than 2.5 yards. So you can use 3 yards if you want it to be longer on the sleeve. So I'm just going to mark my neck width, which is 3 inches, and then I'm going to come down to the end of my fabric, the ending. I'm going to just come down by 2.5 inches. You can use 3 inches, you can use 2 inches. So I came down by 2.5 inches, and then I'm connecting it to the neck with a straight line. So notice that I didn't mark my shoulder measurements here. It's not really necessary, but if you want to go through that process, you can still mark your shoulder measurements and come down by 1 inch, connect it with the 2 inches I have at the end. It's the same thing. So now on that end, you're going to be marking your round sleeve measurements. Remember, the round sleeve of where your sleeve length is stopping, you're going to measure around that place, and then you're going to divide it by 2 plus 1 inch for sewing allowance. So for me, I have 12 inches. I have 12 inches, which is 6, and then I'm going to mark 7. Coming down to the hip line, you just divide your hip measurement by 4, and whatever you get, you're going to be adding like 4 or 5 inches depending on how full you want the cow to be. So I'm adding 4 inches to my own plus 1 inch sewing allowance. So that's what I'm marking there. And after that, you're going to be connecting from your round shoulder measurements. Remember, we marked our round shoulder divided by 2 plus 1 inch. So you're just going to connect it to the hip line, to the measurements you have on your hip line. Okay, so you can use your free hand if you don't want to use a hip curve. If you're good with free hand, you can just use your free hand. At this point, if you have not subscribed, subscribe now. What are you waiting for? You subscribe. Thank you. So now we're going to be working on the downside of our dress. So on this downside, which is the hem and the gown length. So what you're going to do here is just to measure what you have on your hip measurements, on your hip line. Whatever you have there, you minus 1.5 or 2 inches from it. So if you want the downside to be like smaller, you can just minus 2.5 inches. So I'm just minusing 1.5. And then I'm marking it, I marked it down there. And then I'm connecting with my straight ruler. So just connect with your straight ruler. And after that, you're going to remove the sharpness around that hip line. Yeah, it's not supposed to be sharp. So you're going to handle this with care. If you have a long table, I think it's going to be easier for you. So you don't need to start dragging up and down the fabric. So you're just going to use your hip curve and remove the sharp edge and give it a nice curve. So at this point, I'm just going to give a slight curve around the neck depth. I'm just going to use 1.5. This is just to help me ascertain where my neck width is and then the midpoint of the neck. So I'm just using 1.5. And then I'm just measuring to make sure I have that sleeve length. And so you're going to cut off. The front and back is the same, so there is no back neck or front neck. So I'm just cutting off around that edge. So remember our round sleeve measurement. So I'm just going to notch that part. Apart from notching, you can actually just come in by 1 inch and begin your curve from there. So the next thing I want to do now is to mark the um, off shoulder, the off shoulder measurements. Where you want the off shoulder to start, where you want it to fall on. So you're still going to measure this from the midpoint of your neck down to where you want it to fall. Okay. So for me, I have about 13 inches. But I'm not going to mark exactly on 13 inches. I'm going to mark 12 inches because after sewing and everything, it's still going to fall back on 13 inches. So I'm just going to mark 12 inches. So that's all you have to do for this point. And then you're going to connect that 12 inches with a straight ruler down to the neck. Okay. And now I want to mark my sleeve length on that off shoulder part. So you measure the sleeve length, how long or how short you want it to be. So hold on, have you subscribed? Subscribe now. Thank you. For me, I'm going to be using 5 inches. And then I'll be coming down to mark my round arm opening. For me, I'm going to be using 14 inches. So 14 inches divided by 2, I have 7 inches. And then I'm going to add 1 inch for sewing allowance, ½ inch for joining the shoulder, and ½ inch for joining on the downside. So I'm just going to mark 8 inches. You can actually decide to use 8.5. That's 1 inch allowance for joining the sides. Depends on you. And then I'm going to be connecting with my hip curve as usual down to my hip line. One side of this gown is partially straight, so we're going to be eliminating some part of it. And then I'm going to first of all mark the line. After making my curved line, I'm going to cut. Remember, that part is the saggy part around the below the armhole. So if you want it to be really curl, you don't need to connect it up to that point. So here I'm cutting off one part of my gown. Remember, I'm just cutting just 2 pieces, the first one and the second. Please don't cut the whole 4 pieces, please. So I'm just notching the arm opening we marked earlier. So you notch that part and also notch where you want your falling of the arm off shoulder, where you want it to stop. So you just notch there and notch your arm opening. And then next we're just going to connect the neck to the falling parts of the sleeve. And you're just going to do this with a straight ruler. So see how I'm collecting my own, and this is the off shoulder of our gown. This is the off part of the gown. And then you're going to cut the first 2 pieces again, just like we did in the other side. Don't cut the whole 4 pieces, all right? So you're just going to cut it straight to that part you notched earlier where the falling is going to stop. And that is that. I think our gown is almost ready. The sewing part is just a few minutes. So we're going over to our sewing machine to start sewing. So you're just going to be joining the sleeve length, that's the falling part of your dress. You're just going to join the sleeve length, that's the shorter sleeve, and then you're going to join the longer sleeve with ½ inch sewing allowance. You're just going to join with ½ inch the both shoulders. Okay, and then after that we're just going to join the sides. Remember where we notched our sleeve opening, our round arm opening. So you're just going to start from there and sew to the down. So as you can see, I'm done sewing mine. This is the arm opening of the longer side. So I think I'm just going to turn this inside out so you see the clearer view and understand better. So this is just how it looks. So this is the arm opening. And then as you can see, this is the shorter side of our sleeve. That's where the gown is falling. You can actually decide to use 6 inches for that side for the sleeve length. It totally depends on you. You can even use 4 inches. So this is our neck opening. We're just going to turn it with a bias strip. Sew the bias onto the front side and then turn it in to the wrong side, and that is just it. And you're going to have a neat finishing. And then for the round sleeve, you can decide to use a bias or you just fold ½ inch and ½ inch again. It totally depends on you. So for me, I'm going to be folding just a little. And then on the hem, you can decide to still fold or you can decide to use a bias strip to turn it. And for me, I really want this gown to be very long, and so this down part of my gown is the has this factory seal. So I'm just instead of folding half, I want to just trim it off. So guys, you're welcome to the sewing table. You're welcome to the sewing machine. So now I want to start turning the neck with the bias strip. Okay, so I'm turning my fabric onto the front side, the right side of the fabric, and then I'm going to be placing my bias strip. So if you want to use your bias, first of all, fold the bias and place it edge to edge on the fabric. The edge of the bias strip is going to be touching the edge of your fabric, okay? And then you're just going to sew along that folded line, along the folded line on the bias. That's what you're going to sew. And then when you get to the end, you're just going to sew a little bit past where you started, maybe like 1 inch extra, and you're going to sew this on top of where your bias started. Just sew in by 1 inch extra before you cut it off. And then we're going to go a second round by turning it inside this time around. So we're turning the bias inside to the wrong side of the fabric, and then we're going to sew. And please be careful while sewing. Just take it gently, please. Make sure you have a very neat finishing around this neck area. Here we go. See how neat it's looking. And then I'm going to fold my round sleeve. Like I told you, I'm just going to fold in a little and a little again. Just 2 folds, 2 little folds, not even up to ½ inch. And then I'm going to sew all the way around. And then I'm basically going to do the same thing on the other side of the round sleeve. And then we'll continue from there. So I'm done folding the round sleeve, and then I told you I'm going to just trim off on the factory finishing. So I have a little bit of fiber like strands, so I'm just trimming them off in a way that it's going to look good. So I really want this gown to be very long, so folding it I think is going to shorten it by 1 inch. So here is the final look. This is what we just made. Like I told you, you can use 3 yards of fabric, so you can make the sleeve length longer than this. So this is what we have. What a beauty. So this is actually very simple and easy to make. If this video has been very helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, share with your family and friends. Thank you for watching my video. See you in my next one. Bye.